Hey, everyone. Tonight, we are not just slipping into history. We are stepping into a life most people never imagined living. Not the life of a knight, a lord, or a queen, but the life of the one who kept the entire world running, quietly, invisibly, the medieval peasant. Imagine waking on a bed of straw, the smell of earth and smoke in the air, breath turning white in the cold morning light. Outside your cottage, mud waits like an old enemy, and the fields stretch out endlessly, demanding your strength before the sun is even fully awake. This was a world built on backs, bent, blistered, and uncelebrated, where survival meant knowing the weather better than scripture, working with hands cracked from frost, and praying that the harvest, the Lord, the church, and fate itself would show just a little mercy. Yet beneath the hardship was a quiet, stubborn resilience, a kind of strength found not in glory, but in the simplest acts, tying worn boots, sharing a crust of bread, lifting a sleeping child from the cold floor, or whispering a prayer into the smoke rising from a crooked chimney. Before we set off, if you enjoy these quiet dives into history, please like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely do. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a small wonder to see this sleepy audience scattered across the map. Now, settle back and close your eyes. You can almost hear it, the soft clucking of chickens outside the door, the low creak of a wooden beam, the distant toll of a church bell drifting across the fields, calling a village of weary souls to another day. Let's drift into the life of a medieval peasant, a world of mud, hunger, hope, and the quiet power of ordinary people who endured more than we ever will. Part 1. The morning of your new life. A persistent chill, deeper than any blanket, stirred you from the shallow depths of slumber. It seeped from the packed earth floor, through the thin mat of reeds, and into your very bones, a cold that knew no mercy. You shifted, feeling the dry, brittle stalks of straw poke and prod beneath your warm woolen tunic. The air, heavy and still, carried the intimate perfume of your dwelling, the unmistakable scent of damp earth, lingering wood smoke from the banked hearth, and the subtle tone of nearby animals. Your breath, when exhaled, misted the air, a visible cloud in the dim, cold room as you slowly began to rise. Another medieval peasant confronting the dawn of a life profoundly different from anything you knew. Imagine the rough texture of the straw against your cheek, its familiar scratch a constant companion to your rest. This was your bed, a communal pallet shared with your family, its layers of hay and chaff providing a meager buffer against the frozen ground. Sleep, when it came, was a heavy, dreamless descent into utter exhaustion, a temporary surrender to a body perpetually pushed to its limits by ceaseless toil. Now, as consciousness slowly returned, the world pressed in with its inescapable realities. The ache in your muscles, the stiffness in your joints, the subtle gnawing of hunger in your belly. The mud-daubed walls of your home, thick but unplastered, offered a sturdy, if crude, defense against the biting wind outside. Gaps around the small, unglazed window openings, stuffed with rags or straw, allowed faint, bruised light to filter through, a hesitant promise of the sun's eventual ascent. The rough timber beams of the roof, dark with centuries of smoke, stretched across the ceiling, providing a sturdy framework for the thick, insulating thatch above. Listen to the soft rustle of straw as your family stirred around you. A husband, his face a shadowed mask of weariness. Children, small bundles wrapped in coarse wool, their breathing soft and rhythmic. The distant lowing of a cow or the bleating of a sheep, housed in an adjacent byre within the hut, was a constant, comforting reminder of their vital presence, their shared warmth contributing to the fragile internal microclimate. The cold within the room was pervasive, clinging to everything. Your breath, visible in the dim light, mingled with the last wisps of smoke from the banked hearth, creating a hazy, ethereal atmosphere. This was a cold that bit deep, penetrating through layers of worn wool and patched hides, settling into your very bones, making every movement a conscious act of will, every muscle protest against its insidious grip. To rise was a physical protest. Your feet, bare and numb, met the cold, damp earth floor, sending a sharp jolt through your body. The rough linen tunic, worn for days, felt coarse against your skin, its fibers already absorbing the pervasive cold. There were no hot baths, no soft towels, no quick comforts to ease the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Only the raw, unyielding reality of a life lived in constant negotiation with the elements. The dim morning light, barely pushing back the deep shadows, offered little solace. The outside world, though still hidden behind thick shutters and the lingering darkness, awaited with its relentless demands. The fields needed tending, the animals required care, and the ceaseless cycle of labor, obligation, and survival was about to begin anew. You wake on a bed stuffed with dry stalks, the smell of earth and animals clinging to your clothes. Your breath fogs in the cold room as you rise to a dim morning. This was the profound reality of a medieval peasant's dawn, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into a world ruled by land, weather, and lords, charting the quiet strength of ordinary lives, forever tethered to the fierce, unyielding will to defy the cold, one breath, one creak of the door at a time. Having wrestled with the profound chill of a medieval dawn and pushed yourself from the straw bed, the next confrontation was immediate and stark: the morning meal. A poor man's breakfast was rarely a moment of comfort or indulgence, but a stark, often unappetizing necessity. Your meal is a crust of yesterday's bread and a sip of weak ale, simple, rough, and never enough to silence the hunger. A chilling testament to constant scarcity, the gnawing ache that fueled the labor to come, and the pervasive fear of famine. Imagine the air inside the cramped, mud-daubed hut, thick with wood smoke, damp earth, and the subtle tang of human presence, now permeated by the faint earthy aroma of stale bread. The sounds were no longer the simple rustle of hay. They included the low murmur of hungry bellies, the rhythmic crunch of hard bread, and the soft sighs of a family trying to find satisfaction in meager fare. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely visible through the gaps in the shutters, underscored the persistent cold. For the vast majority of medieval peasants, their diet was monotonous and meager, consisting primarily of grains. Fresh meat was a rare luxury, vegetables were seasonal, and spices were unattainable. Breakfast, the crucial first meal, was a stark reflection of this pervasive scarcity, designed solely to provide enough calories for a day of arduous labor. Listen to the low murmur of hungry bellies, a persistent, uncomfortable rumble against the quiet morning sounds. Hear the rhythmic crunch of hard, stale bread as it was slowly, deliberately chewed, its texture often tough and dry. See the single, coarse loaf, dark and dense, often a day or two old, broken into portions and passed around the family, its simple form a profound symbol of their precarious existence. Your meal is a crust of yesterday's bread and a sip of weak ale, simple, rough, and never enough to silence the hunger. The bread was typically made from barley, rye, or oats, roughly ground, often with husks still intermingled. It was baked in communal ovens or on hot stones in their own hearths, resulting in a thick, chewy crust and a heavy interior. It was consumed with thin, weak ale or water, its coldness offering little comfort against the morning chill. This ale, often low in alcohol, but safer to drink than untreated water, provided precious calories and hydration. Yet, even with these provisions, hunger was a persistent, unyielding companion. The few bites of bread, the small sips of ale, provided only a fleeting, unsatisfying mouthful. The gnawing ache in your stomach, momentarily muted, would soon return sharper than before, a relentless declaration of your body's constant need. The psychological impact was immense. The constant hunger, the monotonous diet, the realization that even your breakfast was barely sufficient. These eroded mental fortitude, making every task harder, every moment of rest a battle. The simple meal became a daily confrontation with your precarious survival, a stark reminder of your place at the bottom of the feudal ladder. Your family, huddled close around the rekindled, struggling fire, shared this grim reality. Their faces, pale and drawn, their bodies hunched against the chill, their eyes fixed on the bread, reflected the same profound weariness, the same quiet fortitude against the elements, knowing that every calorie was a victory against starvation. Its story, baked into every crust, whispered of an endless struggle. A poor man's breakfast was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the sensory world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless ache of hunger and the quiet despair of a life without basic sustenance, always preparing for the next demand of survival. After confronting the stark reality of a poor man's breakfast and the pervasive cold of the medieval hut, the next act of the morning was not about fashion, but sheer necessity. Dressing for survival was a meticulous, often uncomfortable ritual. Layered wool and linen scratch at your skin, patched and mended so often that the original fabric is barely visible. These were not clothes of choice, but of function, a crucial armor against the lethal chill and the harsh realities of daily toil, transforming humble garments into a profound testament to relentless utility and silent endurance. Imagine the rough texture of the woolen shift against your skin, its fibers coarse and unyielding, chafing perpetually with every movement. Its scent, a pungent mixture of unwashed sheep, stale wood smoke, and the subtle tang of human sweat, was deeply ingrained, an inescapable aroma that permeated your very being. These were not clothes for comfort, but for raw, unyielding function, meticulously mended and worn until they literally fell apart. Your wardrobe consisted of simple, utilitarian garments, passed down through generations, mended countless times. A long, rough woolen shift or tunic formed the base layer, its thick weave designed to trap air for insulation. Trousers or leggings, crudely cut from similar fabric, were worn by men, while women wore long, simple dresses. Over these, layers of other woolen tunics or a heavy, undyed woolen cloak provided essential insulation against the biting cold. Listen to the soft rustle of coarse wool as you moved, the faint scrape of fabric against skin, a constant low-level irritation. Hear the subtle shifts of your family members as they, too, donned their layers, their movements accompanied by the creak of worn fabric. See the dull, muted colors of the garments, blending into the earthy tones of the hut, their surfaces thick with accumulated dirt, dust, and the indelible stains of daily labor. Layered wool and linen scratch at your skin, patched and mended so often that the original fabric is barely visible. The wool, while providing crucial warmth by trapping air, was inherently itchy, its coarse fibers constantly irritating the skin, particularly when damp from sweat or morning dew. The few pieces of linen, softer but less insulating, were typically reserved for inner garments, worn closest to the body. The patching and mending were ceaseless. Each garment was a living history, a tapestry of repairs. Tears from thorns, wear from constant rubbing, damage from vermin. All were meticulously repaired with bone needles and sinew thread, often with scraps of different colors or textures. The original fabric, sometimes centuries old, was barely visible beneath the multitude of patches, each one a testament to scarcity, a silent declaration of ingenuity and careful conservation. The psychological impact was immense. The constant discomfort, the relentless itching, the pervasive smell, these were not merely annoyances. They were profound indignities that eroded mental fortitude, making every task harder, every moment of rest a battle. There was no escape from them, no true cleanliness, only the ceaseless struggle to manage their discomfort and ensure enough warmth. Your family, huddled close, shared this reality. Their clothing, like yours, bore the marks of constant use and pervasive filth. Their own struggles with itching and grime were a shared burden, an unspoken understanding of their common lot, their garments a collective shield against the unforgiving winter. Its story, woven into every grubby thread, whispered of an inescapable reality. Dressing for survival was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the sensory world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless assault of pervasive grime and the quiet despair of a life where clothes were literally armor, stitched with the enduring strength of ordinary lives. Having endured the cold dawn and donned the itchy layers of your survival garments, the call of the fields and the demands of the day pulled you inevitably outwards. The muddy path outside was a visceral daily reality. Your boots sink into the mud as chickens scatter and neighbors nod silently, each already burdened by their own morning tasks, transforming a simple walk into a profound confrontation with pervasive filth, the relentless elements, and the quiet, communal struggle of medieval life. Imagine the air, crisp and biting, thick with the earthy scent of damp soil, manure, and the pervasive aroma of wood smoke, mingling with the subtle tang of human presence. The sounds were no longer the simple rustle of wool. They included the squelch of boots in thick mud, the frantic clucking of scattering chickens, and the low murmur of distant conversations. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely visible through the gaps in the shutters, gave way to a landscape of pervasive, cloying mud. The unpaved streets and paths of the medieval village were perpetually exposed to the elements. Rain, melting snow, and animal waste combined to create a ubiquitous, inescapable mass of thick, tenacious mud. In winter and early spring, these paths transformed into veritable rivers of grime, making every journey, however short, an arduous and unpleasant task. Listen to the distinct, squelching sound as your crude, straw-stuffed boots sink into the thick, cloying mud. Its cold, viscous embrace pulling at your feet with every laborious step. Hear the frantic clucking and fluttering of chickens, scattering from your path, their small forms kicking up plumes of mud. See the path stretching ahead, a dark, winding ribbon of grime, its surface uneven, treacherous, perpetually soiled by human and animal traffic. Your boots sink into the mud as chickens scatter and neighbors nod silently. Your footwear, typically crude leather boots or wooden clogs, offered only limited protection. Mud would seep in, chilling your feet, soaking your straw stuffing. The chickens, ubiquitous scavengers in any medieval village, would peck at the ground, stirring up more mud, their frantic scattering a small, daily chaos. Neighbors nod silently, each already burdened by their own morning tasks. As you navigated the treacherous path, you would encounter other villagers, their figures hunched against the cold, their faces grim, their boots equally caked in mud. Greetings were often curt, non-verbal, a simple nod, a shared glance of grim understanding, for words felt superfluous in the face of such overwhelming daily struggle. Each individual was already absorbed in their own relentless battle against the elements and the demands of feudal life. The pervasive filth of the muddy path underscored the profound lack of sanitation in medieval towns. Animal waste, household refuse, and human night soil were often simply discarded into the streets, mingling with the mud to create a potent, sickening aroma. This constant exposure to contamination fueled rampant disease, transforming every journey into a potential health risk. The psychological impact was immense. To live perpetually immersed in such an environment, where the very ground beneath your feet was perpetually soiled, eroded mental fortitude. It bred a profound acceptance of dirt, a different standard of hygiene than we know today, but also a constant low-grade disgust. Its story, told in every squelching step, whispered of an unending struggle. The muddy path outside was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the sensory world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless assault of pervasive grime and the quiet despair of a life without basic hygiene, always preparing for the next demand of survival. Having navigated the muddy path outside and braced against the pervasive cold of a medieval dawn, your senses, now fully awake, registered an omnipresent sound that dictated the very rhythm of your existence. The church bell's call was more than a mere signal. It was the resounding voice of the community, a profound, unyielding decree. The village bell rings out across the fields, a reminder that your life belongs not just to the land, but to God and your Lord, transforming a simple sound into a pervasive declaration of spiritual and feudal obligation, binding every peasant to a rigid, inescapable hierarchy. Imagine the air, crisp and biting, thick with the subtle scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and the pervasive aroma of human apprehension. The sounds of the muddy path, the clucking chickens, the low murmur of distant conversations all were momentarily subsumed by a deeper, more resonant sound, a single deep clang. Then, after a measured pause, another, and another. Distant church bells tolling over muddy tracks underscored the profound power of this daily ritual. The church bell, a formidable object hanging high in the village steeple, was not merely a mechanical device. It was imbued with immense spiritual and communal power. Its sound, believed to carry divine authority, commanded obedience, permeated every corner of peasant life. It marked the passage of the hours, summoned villagers to mass, celebrated births and weddings, and tolled for deaths. But above all, it dictated the rhythms of work and worship. Listen to the slow, deliberate toll of the bell, its resonance vibrating through the very earth, through the thick walls of your hut, gripping your heart with a familiar, almost subconscious understanding of its command. Hear the muffled crunch of hobnailed boots or crude wooden clogs on the frozen ground, as fellow peasants, wrapped in their coarse woolen cloaks, walked towards the fields, their movements quickening with each chime. See the bell itself, a dark, imposing silhouette against the pale morning sky, a visual declaration of its unwavering authority. The village bell rings out across the fields, a reminder that your life belongs not just to the land, but to God and your Lord. Its first peal at dawn was the unequivocal signal to rise, to begin the day's relentless labor. To ignore it, to sleep past its insistent call, was to risk the wrath of the Lord's reeve, to face fines, or even the whip, for your time was not your own. It belonged to the land, and to the master of the land. The bell also marked the canonical hours of prayer, reminding you of your spiritual obligations. Before heading to the fields, a short, hurried prayer would be whispered, a plea for strength, for protection, for a bountiful harvest, a brief spiritual duty woven into the fabric of the morning rush. It reinforced the belief that your life, though bound by earthly lords, was also under the watchful eye of God, subject to his divine will. The psychological impact was immense. The constant audible reminder of these inescapable obligations to labor, to worship, to obey created a pervasive tension. It reinforced the rigid hierarchy of medieval society, your immutable place at the bottom, bound to the land and to your feudal master. Its story, echoing in every resonant clang, spoke of unending duty. The church bell's call was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of feudal and spiritual obligation, and the quiet despair of a life where even a sound carried immense, unspoken power, dictating every breath from dawn till dusk. Part 2, labor, obligation, and endless toil. With the church bell's final echo fading and the cold morning air biting at your perpetually itchy wool, the true unyielding rhythm of medieval peasant existence asserted itself. Work in the Lord's fields was not a choice, but an inescapable, all-consuming obligation. You bend your back to the soil, hands raw and cold, knowing most of what you grow does not belong to you, transforming relentless toil into a grim act of subservience, a chilling testament to the crushing weight of feudalism, where every bead of sweat and every aching muscle ultimately served another. Imagine the air, sharp and biting, thick with the earthy scent of damp, frozen soil, horse manure, and the pervasive aroma of human effort. The sounds were no longer the distant toll of bells. They included the rhythmic creak of plows, the lowing of straining oxen, the shouts of overseers, and the muffled grunts of countless laborers. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely lifting, revealed rows of bent figures merging with the gray landscape. The vast open fields surrounding the village were the very heart of medieval agrarian life. These lands, however, were not entirely your own. As a serf, you were bound to the manor, and a significant portion of its most fertile land, the lord as domain, had to be worked first, diligently and without complaint, before you could even turn to your own meager strips. This was the corvée, the forced labor owed to your master, the non-negotiable bedrock of the feudal system. Listen to the rhythmic creak of the wooden plow, groaning as it cut through the stubborn, damp earth, turning over shallow furrows. Hear the low, strained lowing of the oxen, their powerful bodies straining against their yokes, their breath pluming white in the cold air. See the long, dark lines of newly turned earth stretching behind you, a testament to your relentless, back-breaking toil, slowly transforming the field into a ready canvas for cultivation. You bend your back to the soil, hands raw and cold, knowing most of what you grow does not belong to you. Your hands, calloused and chapped from a lifetime of physical exertion, would ache with a dull, persistent pain, turning red and numb in the cold. Your back, perpetually bent from guiding the plow or wielding the hoe, would throb with an unyielding soreness. Despite this immense personal effort, the brutal truth remained. The vast majority of the grain, the produce, the very fruits of your labor were destined for the Lord's granaries, his table, his retinue. This was a profound psychological burden. To toil so tirelessly, to expend such immense energy, yet to know that the primary beneficiary was not your starving family, but your distant lord, bred a deep sense of powerlessness, a quiet despair that shaped every swing of the hoe, every push of the plow. The overseer, often the lord's reeve, would patrol the fields on horseback, his gaze sharp, his staff or whip a visible reminder of his authority. His presence ensured that the work was done with maximum efficiency, that no one slacked, that every ounce of peasant sweat served the Lord's needs before their own. The cold, the damp, the pervasive mud, these hardships amplified the physical toll. Your boots sank into the thick, cloying earth, hampering movement, making every step an exertion. The relentless physical demands, coupled with annoying hunger, tested your endurance to its limits. Its story, written in every furrow, whispered of subjugation. Work in the Lord's fields was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of feudal obligation and the quiet despair of a life without true autonomy, lived beneath the omnipresent shadow of total control. Beyond the aching back and the raw hands tilling the Lord's fields, the very instruments of medieval peasant labor carried their own immense burden. The weight of tools and time was a pervasive, unyielding reality. Every tool is handmade, heavy, and worn. The day passes in a rhythm of repetition. Swing, lift, carry, endure, transforming humble implements into extensions of a weary body, and revealing the profound, relentless drudgery that defined existence in a world where efficiency was born of brute force and unwavering human persistence. Imagine the rough, splintered wood of a hoe handle, worn smooth by countless years of use, pressing hard against your calloused palm. The cold, dull glint of its iron blade, heavy and unyielding, seemed to weigh a ton with each swing. Your tools were not light, factory-produced implements. They were ancient, rudimentary, and profoundly heavy, requiring immense physical effort to wield. Your inventory was simple: a wooden plow, perhaps tipped with an iron share, a heavy, short-handled hoe, a crude, flint-tipped sickle, a sturdy wooden rake. These were the technologies of survival, painstakingly crafted by the village smith or by your own hands, passed down through generations, meticulously repaired until they literally fell apart. Listen to the rhythmic thud of the hoe against the stubborn earth, a dull, resonant sound that vibrated through your arms, up into your aching shoulders. Hear the low grunts of exertion from your own throat, the ragged breathing of your body strained by relentless repetition. See the tool itself, its form ancient and unrefined, yet utterly vital, its weight a constant, tangible presence in your hands. Every tool is handmade, heavy, and worn. The axe, with its heavy iron head and thick wooden handle, needed immense strength to swing, to split firewood. The scythe, with its long, curving blade, required a powerful, sweeping motion to cut through grain. The plow, even with the aid of an ox, demanded constant guidance, its wooden frame groaning under the resistance of the soil. Each tool was an extension of your own muscle, demanding every ounce of your physical strength. The day passes in a rhythm of repetition. Swing, lift, carry, endure. From dawn until dusk, your body moved in an unceasing cycle of repetitive tasks. The rhythmic swing of the hoe, breaking apart clumps of earth. The slow, laborious lift of a heavy sack of grain. The arduous carry of firewood from the forest. The constant, monotonous push of the plow. Each action flowed into the next, a relentless, unbroken rhythm that consumed your energy, dulled your mind, and left your body aching with profound fatigue. The psychological impact was immense. The sheer monotony, the relentless physical demands, the knowledge that tomorrow would bring the same repetitive toil. These eroded mental fortitude, making every task harder, every moment of rest a battle. Hope, a fragile commodity, was constantly challenged by the brutal reality of unchanging drudgery. The cold of winter, the pervasive mud, the constant hunger, these hardships amplified the physical toll, making each swing, each lift, each carry even more exhausting. Your tools, your time, your very body were inextricably bound to this cycle of endless labor. Its story, carved in every worn handle, whispered of unyielding toil. The weight of tools and time was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of ceaseless labor and the quiet despair of a life defined by heavy implements and monotonous repetition. Beyond the relentless rhythm of the fields, where human strength battled the unyielding earth, lay another vital hub of medieval peasant survival. The village smith's fire was a profound, almost magical presence. Inside the smithy, sparks dance while iron meets hammer. The heat is welcome, but the work is brutal, transforming raw metal into essential tools, providing a rare glimpse of intense industry and underscoring the relentless, physically demanding labor that underpinned every aspect of their agrarian existence. Imagine the air inside the small, sturdy smithy, thick with the pungent aroma of coal smoke, the metallic tang of hot iron, and the subtle scent of human sweat. The sounds were no longer the monotonous creak of plows. They included the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, the roar of the bellows, and the sharp hiss of quenching water. The sharp clang of iron in a blacksmith's shop, its rhythm a constant backdrop, underscored the brutal work. The village blacksmith was an indispensable figure in medieval society. He was the mender of broken tools, the creator of essential implements, plowshares, axe heads, sickles, nails, and the master of the most precious of materials, iron. Without his skill, the agrarian economy would grind to a halt, leaving peasants unable to cultivate their fields or defend their homes. Listen to the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, a deafening, resonant symphony that vibrated through the very earth, through your bones, marking each powerful strike. Hear the roar of the bellows, sucking in air with a guttural gasp and forcing it into the heart of the coals, making them glow with renewed intensity. See the iron, dull and black, slowly transforming in the infernal heat, from cherry red to a brilliant, incandescent orange, shimmering with raw power. Inside the smithy, sparks dance while iron meets hammer. The smith, a figure of immense strength, his muscles honed by years of wielding a heavy hammer, would work with grim focus. His face, perpetually grimed with soot, his hands calloused and scarred, his eyes sharp and focused, reflected the pulsating glow of the forge. Sparks, tiny and incandescent, would fly in dazzling arcs, brief, bright stars against the smoky dark, a dangerous dance of fire and metal. The heat is welcome, but the work is brutal. The intense, radiating heat from the roaring forge was, paradoxically, both a blessing and a curse. In the cold of winter, its warmth was profoundly welcome, drawing villagers close, offering a fleeting reprieve from the pervasive chill. But for the smith, the heat was relentless, stifling, forcing his body to sweat profusely even in cold weather. The work was physically punishing. Each strike of the hammer was deliberate, powerful, shaping the stubborn metal, drawing out its impurities, creating the implements of survival. The heavy sledgehammer, wielded by an apprentice or a strong helper, added to the relentless back-breaking toil. The psychological impact was immense. The blacksmith's life was one of ceaseless, physically demanding labor, often spent in solitude, battling heat, noise, and the sheer resistance of metal. Yet, his contribution to the community was undeniable, his skill revered. Its story, hammered into every piece of iron, whispered of resilience. The village smith's fire was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of physically demanding craft and the quiet despair of a life defined by the brutal work of hands and fire. Beyond the strenuous rhythm of the fields and the clang of the smithy, another vital, yet perilous, aspect of medieval peasant life unfolded on the fringes of civilization. Herding on the edge of the woods was a relentless, watchful duty. You guide sheep near the tree line, aware that wolves and thieves lurked beyond the shade, transforming a pastoral chore into a constant, terrifying negotiation with the untamed wilderness, and intensifying the pervasive fear of loss that defined their precarious existence. Imagine the air, crisp and biting, thick with the earthy scent of sheep, damp grass, and the subtle tang of wild forest, mingled with the pervasive aroma of wood smoke from distant huts. The sounds were no longer the simple bleating of a flock alone. They included the mournful lowing of cattle, the distant howl of a wolf, and the sharp bark of your vigilant dog. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely lifting, revealed the dense, dark outline of the forest, a silent, watchful entity. Your family's small flock, perhaps a few sheep for wool and occasional meat, a goat for milk, or a scrawny cow for milk and labor, represented a significant portion of your precarious wealth. Protecting them was paramount, a sacred duty that often took you to the dangerous periphery of the known world. Listen to the constant bleating of the sheep, their soft, nervous murmurs, their rhythmic chewing of sparse grass. Hear the distant, mournful cry of a jackal from the dry hills, or the chilling howl of a wolf carried on the wind, instantly raising your hackles. See the vast, open plains stretching to the horizon, dotted with the moving forms of your flock, a small, vulnerable island of life near the menacing dark of the forest. You guide sheep near the tree line, aware that wolves and thieves lurk beyond the shade. The forest, a source of vital firewood and occasional forage, was also a realm of profound ancient fears. Its dense, tangled depths concealed powerful predators, wolves, bears, and wild boars, their hunger sharpened by the lean seasons, making them bold. A moment of inattention, a lapse in vigilance, could result in a devastating loss, a direct threat to your family's survival. Thieves, too, lurked beyond the shade. Desperate men, outlaws, or rival peasants, driven by hunger or greed, would use the cover of the woods to approach stealthily, attempting to pilfer a valuable animal. Your vigilance and the watchful presence of your loyal dog were the only barriers against such insidious threats. The shepherd's vigil was a lonely one, often performed in solitude for hours or even days, far from the comforting sounds of the village. The vastness of the steppe, the profound silence of the wilderness, amplified the sense of isolation and the omnipresent danger. Your senses, honed by necessity, were acutely tuned to every rustle, every shadow, every subtle shift in the wind. The cold of winter, the pervasive dampness, the constant hunger, these hardships amplified the physical and psychological toll. Your body ached, your mind was weary, but your focus remained absolute, the protection of your precious flock, the very lifeline of your family. Its story, sung in every quiet watch, whispered of peril. Herding on the edge of the woods was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of guarding life against the untamed wild and the desperate greed of others. Its quiet endurance, a testament to fragile survival. Beyond the fields and the dangerous edges of the woods, another vital ritual in the ceaseless cycle of medieval peasant life unfolded. Grinding grain at the mill was not a simple errand, but a profound act of necessity and economic dependence. The turning water wheel groans as the miller oversees each sack of grain, taking his share before you take yours, transforming raw produce into life-sustaining flour, and underscoring the relentless burden of feudal obligation and the pervasive scarcity that defined their precarious existence. Imagine the air inside the mill, thick with the fine dust of ground flour, mingled with the earthy scent of damp wood, cold river water, and the subtle tang of human presence. The sounds were no longer the bleating of sheep. They included the rhythmic creak and splash of the water wheel, the deep, resonant rumble of millstones, and the low murmur of anxious peasants. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely lifting, gave way to the steady, churning rhythm of the mill. The village mill, typically located on the banks of a river or stream, was an indispensable engine of medieval survival. Its massive wooden water wheel, harnessing the power of flowing water, turned heavy grindstones, which meticulously processed the painstakingly harvested grain into flour, the very staff of life, essential for making bread and brewing ale. Listen to the rhythmic creak and splash of the wooden water wheel, a constant, insistent sound that vibrated through the very timbers of the mill, a powerful counterpoint to the relentless flow of the river. Hear the deep, resonant rumble of the massive millstones, grinding slowly, inexorably, reducing tough kernels to coarse flour. See the miller, a burly figure, his face and clothes perpetually dusted with white flour, his eyes sharp and watchful, overseeing each sack. The turning water wheel groans as the miller oversees each sack of grain, taking his share before you take yours. Your precious sacks of barley, rye, or oats, painstakingly cultivated and harvested, would be brought to the mill. The miller, a powerful and often resented figure in the village economy, bore the responsibility of transforming your raw grain into usable flour. His services, however, came at a price. The miller's toll, a specific portion of the milled grain, which he was legally entitled to take as payment for his labor and the use of his mill. This toll, often a tenth or more, was taken directly from your hard-won harvest before you received your own share. It was a primary feudal obligation, a constant reminder of your economic dependence on the lord, who usually owned the mill, and his designated miller. The calculation was grim. What little you had, already diminished by the lord's taxes and the church's tithes, would shrink further still. The psychological impact was immense. To witness your own precious grain, your family's sustenance, being systematically taken away, bred a profound sense of powerlessness, a quiet despair. The miller, however honest, was seen as an agent of the system, his actions intensifying the constant anxiety of scarcity. The cold of winter, the pervasive mud, the constant hunger, these hardships amplified the physical and psychological toll. The mill, a source of vital sustenance, was also a stark symbol of relentless extraction. Its story, told in every grinding creak, whispered of obligation. Grinding grain at the mill was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of feudal obligation and the quiet despair of a life defined by unending, unrewarded toil. Part 3: Power, Danger, and the Unseen Rules. Beyond the communal toil of fields and mills, beyond the immediate rhythms of daily survival, lay the pervasive, absolute power of your feudal overlord. Bowing to the manor was not merely a physical gesture, but an act of profound daily submission. Your lord rides by in polished armor while you kneel in mud. Your life is tied to his land and his whims, transforming a simple encounter into a chilling declaration of rigid social hierarchy, intensifying the constant fear of arbitrary command and perpetually reminding you of your utter powerlessness beneath his shadow. Imagine the air, thick with the subtle scent of damp earth, horse manure, and the pervasive aroma of human apprehension, now mingled with the sharp tang of polished steel and expensive leather. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of resigned peasants. They included the rhythmic clang of distant hooves, the rich jingle of harness, and the authoritative shouts of the lord's retinue. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely lifting, revealed the formidable stone manor, looming like a silent, unyielding giant. The lord's manor, typically a fortified stone castle or a grand timber hall, stood apart from the peasant village, a visual declaration of immense power and privilege. It was the administrative and military heart of the feudal estate, the seat of his authority over all the land, its resources, and all who lived upon it. For the peasant, the manor was both a source of fragile protection and a profound wellspring of fear, its presence omnipresent. Listen to the rhythmic clang of distant hooves, growing steadily louder, announcing the lord's approach. Hear the rich jingle of his horse's elaborate harness, the creak of fine leather, the murmur of his retinue, their voices carrying an air of authority. See the lord, a formidable figure, mounted on a powerful warhorse, clad in gleaming, polished armor, his banners snapping defiantly, his gaze sweeping over the prostrate figures in the field. Your lord rides by in polished armor while you kneel in mud. This was the core of the encounter. As the lord, or his representative, rode through his lands, a peasant was expected to immediately cease work, dismount, if on horseback, and kneel in profound deference. Your crude, mud-stained clothes, your dirt-encrusted hands, your bowed head, were a stark visual counterpoint to his gleaming armor, his powerful steed, his elevated status. The mud, thick and cloying, clung to your knees, staining your clothes. a constant reminder of your peasant status, your deep connection to the earth. To fail to kneel, to hesitate, to meet his gaze directly, these were acts of profound disrespect, a blatant challenge to his authority that could invite swift and brutal retribution. Fines, whipping, or even the loss of your meager plot. Your life is tied to his land and his whims. This was the chilling truth. As a serf, your very existence was bound to his manor. Your labor, your crops, your animals, your family, and your meager freedoms were alternately at his whim. A new tax, an arbitrary demand for labor, a sudden decree, these could profoundly alter your life, and you had no recourse, no power to resist. The psychological impact was immense. The constant awareness of this pervasive power, the knowledge that your future was entirely at the whim of another, eroded mental fortitude. It bred a profound sense of powerlessness, a quiet despair that shaped every decision, every interaction. Its story, written in every bowed head, whispered of endless subservience. Bowing to the manor was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of feudal obligation and the quiet despair of a life lived beneath the omnipresent shadow of total control. Beyond the daily acts of obeisance to the feudal lord, medieval village life was governed by a harsh, often arbitrary system of law enforcement. The sheriff's justice was a chilling, pervasive reality. Punishment is swift and public. The law is not to protect you, it is to control you, transforming every transgression into a brutal spectacle of power, ensuring conformity through fear, and leaving an indelible mark on both the condemned and the community that watched, perpetually reinforcing the strict, unwritten laws of their land. Imagine the air, utterly frigid, sharp and brutal, thick with the subtle scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and the pervasive aroma of human apprehension, now mingled with the sour tang of humiliation and profound fear. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of resigned peasants. They included the low murmur of the gathered crowd, the sharp crack of the whip, the desperate cries of the condemned, and the uneasy silence that followed each public punishment. Frost glimmering on iron shackles, reflecting the pale morning light, underscored the stark brutality of the scene. The sheriff, or shire reeve, was the king's chief officer in a shire county, responsible for maintaining law and order, collecting royal taxes, and administering justice in the king's name. In practice, far from the king's direct oversight, the sheriff's power in a distant village could be vast and arbitrary, a direct, often brutal manifestation of royal authority. Listen to the low murmur of the gathered crowd, their voices a blend of morbid curiosity, condemnation, and perhaps a subtle, unspoken sympathy. Hear the sharp, authoritative voice of the sheriff, or his appointed executioner, pronouncing sentence, his words cutting through the silence with chilling finality. See the makeshift gallows, the whipping post, or the pillory, already erected in the center of the village square, stark and ominous against the morning sky, awaiting its grim purpose. Punishment is swift and public. The law is not to protect you, it is to control you. Justice was rarely dispensed in private. It was a public performance, designed to be seen, to be heard, to be felt by the entire community. The condemned, often stripped of their outer garments, their head bowed, would be paraded through the streets, or placed in the pillory, or bound to the whipping post. Their humiliation was public, deliberate, and designed to strip them of dignity, to make them an object lesson for all. The punishments were brutal, the stocks and pillory for public ridicule, floggings, public whippings with heavy leather thongs for petty theft or insubordination, mutilations, cutting off an ear or a hand for repeat offenders, and executions by hanging for grave crimes like murder or treason. These were not merely acts of retribution. They were powerful tools of social control, ensuring absolute obedience to the Lord's law and the king's authority. The psychological impact on the witnesses was immense. To see a neighbor, a friend, or even a relative subjected to public shame and physical pain, or put to death, was a crushing burden. It instilled a profound, pervasive fear of transgression, a constant awareness of the strict, unforgiving laws that governed their lives. They learned implicitly that the law existed not to safeguard their rights, but to maintain the power of their masters. The cold, sharp air would amplify the sting of the whip, the agony of the condemned, making the lessons even more visceral. The smell of fear, of sweat, of blood would permeate the square, clinging to the clothes and memories of all who watched. Punishment is swift and public. The law is not to protect you, it is to control you. The sheriff's justice was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface. Forever tethered to the relentless burden of brutal justice and the quiet despair of a life lived under the constant shadow of arbitrary power. Beyond the confines of the village and the stark realities of feudal justice, the medieval world presented a terrifying, omnipresent threat to any who dared to venture beyond its precarious safety. The road of many dangers was a profound, chilling reality. A simple trip beyond the village risked bandits, wild animals, or worse, accusations of wandering unlawfully, transforming every journey into a perilous gamble with fate and intensifying the pervasive fear of isolation that defined their bound existence. Imagine the air, crisp and biting, thick with the subtle scent of damp earth, wild forest, and the pervasive aroma of human apprehension, now mingled with the sharp tang of unspoken peril. The sounds were no longer the murmur of villagers. They included the distant howl of a wolf, the sharp snap of a twig, and the unnerving silence of an empty path. Mist drifting over fields at dawn, barely lifting, revealed a world teeming with hidden threats. For the medieval peasant, life was primarily lived within the confines of their village or manor. Travel was rare, arduous, and often dangerous. Journeys to a distant market, a pilgrimage to a local shrine, or a summons to the Lord's court were undertakings fraught with immense peril, both natural and human. Listen to the rhythmic crunch of your crude, straw-stuffed boots on the frozen ground, each step a testament to immense physical effort and profound caution. Hear the distant, mournful howl of a wolf from the deep forest, its chilling cry amplified by the stillness, a constant reminder of the predatory world that pressed in from all sides. See the narrow, winding path, barely visible through the morning mist, stretching into the unknown, its edges swallowed by dense thickets. A simple trip beyond the village risked bandits, wild animals, or worse, accusations of wandering unlawfully. Bandits, desperate men driven by hunger or greed, lurked in forests and along lonely stretches of road. Their attacks were swift, brutal, and often lethal, resulting in the loss of precious goods, severe injury, or death. Wild animals, wolves, bears, wild boars were a constant, tangible threat, particularly in winter when food was scarce. More insidiously, there was the risk of accusations of wandering unlawfully. As a serf, you were legally bound to your lord's land. To be caught wandering away from the manor without explicit permission was a serious offense, punishable by fines, imprisonment, or even branding. Any stranger encountered on the road, even if harmless, could report you, turning an innocent journey into a legal peril. The psychological impact was immense. The constant awareness of these manifold dangers, the knowledge that every step beyond the village's perceived safety could lead to profound misfortune, bred a deep-seated apprehension. It fostered a sense of confinement, reinforcing their bound status, amplifying the terror of the unknown. The cold of winter, the pervasive mud, the constant hunger. These hardships amplified the physical toll of travel. Your body ached, your mind was weary, but your focus remained absolute. The safe completion of your journey, the avoidance of any perils. Its story, carved in every rutted track, whispered of peril. The road of many dangers was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface. Forever tethered to the relentless burden of fear and the quiet despair of a life lived under the constant shadow of external threats. Or even a simple journey was a profound gamble with fate. Beyond the ubiquitous mud, the menacing roads, and the iron grip of their lord's ownership, medieval peasants faced a relentless, compounding economic reality. Tithes, rents, and more taxes were an inescapable burden. Your harvest shrinks with every hand that demands a share. Your lord, the church, the miller, the taxman. This was a chilling testament to institutionalized extraction, perpetually ensuring empty pockets, deepening the pervasive fear of scarcity, and transforming ceaseless toil into a grim, unyielding calculation of what little remained for personal survival. Imagine the air, thick with the earthy scent of the threshing floor, the pervasive aroma of wood smoke, and the subtle tang of human apprehension, now mingled with the cold weight of economic burden. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of resigned peasants. They included the rhythmic scrape of measures, the authoritative pronouncements of scribes, and the low murmurs of tired villagers. Fading candlelight over cobblestone streets illuminated faces etched with weariness, and a profound, quiet acceptance of their fate. The peasant's life, from sunup to sundown, was a ceaseless cycle of arduous labor. They worked the land, tended animals, maintained their homes, and sought to feed their families. But the fruit of their labor was never entirely their own. A complex, often overlapping, system of tithes, rents, and various taxes ensured that much of their hard-won bounty was extracted by multiple authorities. Listen to the rhythmic scrape of measures as the grain was carefully, meticulously portioned. Hear the authoritative voice of the Lord's reeve or the priest's representative, his words precise, his gaze unwavering, as he directed the measuring of each farmer's yield. See the vast piles of grain, a golden promise of bread and beer, slowly being portioned out, with significant amounts separated for collection by different hands. Your harvest shrinks with every hand that demands a share. Your lord, the church, the miller, the taxman. Firstly, the Lord demanded his rent. A substantial portion of the harvest paid for the right to cultivate his land. There are also numerous other fees. For using his mill, often a tenth of the grain milled, his oven, his forge. This was the foundation of feudal obligation. Secondly, the church demanded its tithe, typically a tenth of all produce and earnings, intended to support the local priest, maintain the church, and fund charitable works. To fail to pay the tithe was a grave sin, risking divine wrath and eternal damnation. Thirdly, the taxman, representing the king or other higher authority, might demand additional levies for specific purposes: a war, a royal wedding, the maintenance of roads. These royal taxes were often irregular, but equally burdensome. Empty pockets were the inevitable result. After all these extractions, the remaining portion, often tragically small, was what was left for your own family to survive on until the next harvest. It was a meager allowance, requiring careful rationing, constant vigilance against vermin, and the terrifying prospect of hunger in the lean months. Your own family ate only after all the powerful hands had taken their due. The psychological impact was immense. The constant awareness of these multiple extractions, the knowledge that much of their hard-won labor would be taken away, eroded mental fortitude. It bred a profound sense of powerlessness, a quiet despair that shaped every decision, every interaction. They toiled endlessly, yet remained perpetually on the edge of subsistence. Your harvest shrinks with every hand that demands a share. Your lord, the church, the miller, the taxman. Tithes, rents, and empty pockets was a profound reality of medieval peasant life. A chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of institutionalized extraction and the quiet despair of a life defined by endless, unrewarded toil. Beyond the village's muddy tracks and the oppressive weight of feudal demands, beyond the relentless grip of scarcity and the pervasive fears of bandits and taxmen, lay a different, more serene power. Sanctuary behind stone walls was a profound, almost ethereal reality. The monastery rises in silence, a place where books glow in candlelight, a world that feels distant from yours, transforming a remote institution into a beacon of knowledge, spiritual solace, and, paradoxically, a subtle commentary on the harsh realities of secular life. Imagine the air, cool and still, thick with the subtle scent of old parchment, damp stone, and the lingering aroma of incense, mingling with the earthy tang of beeswax candles. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of resigned peasants. They included the solemn chanting of monks, the soft rustle of turning pages, and the profound, almost eerie silence of contemplation. Fading candlelight over cobblestone streets illuminates faces etched with weariness, but softened by profound reverence. The monastery, typically a formidable complex of stone buildings, a church, cloisters, a scriptorium, dormitories, workshops, stood apart from the peasant villages, often on a secluded hill or in a sheltered valley. It was a self-sufficient entity, possessing its own lands, its own resources, its own distinct rhythm of life, governed by the Benedictine rule or similar monastic orders. Listen to the solemn chanting of monks, their voices low and resonant, echoing through the vast, cool nave of the abbey church as they performed their daily rounds of prayer. Hear the soft rustle of turning pages in the scriptorium, the meticulous scratch of a quill on vellum, preserving ancient texts. See the monks, their faces serene, their robes simple wool, moving with quiet purpose through their cloisters and chapels. The monastery rises in silence, a place where books glow in candlelight, a world that feels distant from yours. The profound silence within the monastery walls was a stark contrast to the often noisy, chaotic world of the peasant. It was a silence dedicated to prayer, to study, to contemplation. And within this quietude, knowledge flourished. The scriptorium, the heart of the monastery's intellectual life, was where scribes painstakingly copied and preserved precious books, illuminating them with intricate art. Books glow in candlelight. In an age where literacy was rare and books were immensely valuable, the monastic libraries were vast repositories of knowledge. Sacred scriptures, classical texts, theological treatises, histories, these were illuminated by the flickering light of countless candles, their pages written on precious vellum, literally seeming to glow with an inner radiance. This was a profound intellectual warmth, a beacon of learning in a world often overshadowed by ignorance. The monastery's existence, while spiritual, was also a subtle commentary on the harsh realities of peasant life. It offered a refuge for those who chose the monastic path, an escape from the relentless toil, the gnawing hunger, the constant fear of the secular world. It provided charity, with monks often ladling out soup to the needy during famines. But its very existence underscored the stark contrast between their ordered, spiritually rich lives and the brutal existence of the common folk. The psychological impact was immense. The monastery was a powerful symbol of spiritual hope, of divine grace, of an alternative, more profound existence. It offered a glimpse into a world of knowledge and peace, however distant, however unattainable for most. A world that feels distant from yours. Sanctuary behind stone walls was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of feudal obligation and the quiet despair of a life without true autonomy, yet occasionally illuminated by the distant, serene glow of monastic faith and the quiet promise of an entirely different world. Part 4: Fear, Hunger, and Hard Realities. Beyond the rigid strictures of feudal authority and the tantalizing glimpse of monastic solace, the medieval peasant faced a brutal existential threat that returned with terrifying regularity. Winters of want were a pervasive, chilling reality. The cold bites through cloth as food runs thin. You ration each crumb, hoping the harvest will be kinder next year, transforming the season into a relentless battle for sheer existence, deepening the pervasive fear of famine and leaving an indelible mark on both body and soul. Imagine the air inside your humble cottage, utterly frigid, thick with the earthy scent of mud brick, stale wood smoke, and the subtle tang of human presence, now permeated by the profound chill of scarcity. The sounds were no longer the comforting crackle of a thriving fire. They included the low moans of hunger, the soft rustle of thin blankets, and the rhythmic creak of wooden floors protesting the cold. Distant bells tolling across the winter mist seemed to echo the profound, widespread suffering. The medieval winter was always a period of hardship, but a winter of want, a famine, was a catastrophe. A series of poor harvests, often due to unseasonable rains, prolonged droughts, or early frosts, could quickly deplete the meager food reserves of the peasant population. With roads impassable due to snow and rivers frozen, trade for food was difficult, often impossible. Listen to the low moans of hungry bellies, a persistent, uncomfortable rumble against the quiet morning sounds. Hear the soft rustle of thin blankets as family members shivered, trying to generate warmth from their own failing bodies. See the single coarse loaf of bread, now reduced to a few precious crumbs, being meticulously divided among the family, each morsel a profound, painful calculation. The cold bites through cloth as food runs thin. The freezing temperatures, which could plunge far below zero, exacerbated the suffering of hunger. Bodies, weakened by chronic malnutrition, struggled desperately to generate and retain heat, consuming precious calories in a losing battle against hypothermia. The thin, worn woolen clothes, once a defense, now felt utterly insufficient against the penetrating cold. You ration each crumb. Every bite, every morsel of food became precious beyond measure. The already meager rations were cut further, forcing agonizing choices. Who received how much? How long could this last? The mental effort of rationing, of denying one's own gnawing hunger for the sake of a child, was a profound daily torment. Hoping the harvest will be kinder next year. This was the peasants' ultimate, desperate hope. Their survival, their future, hinged on the unpredictable bounty of the land. They would cling to this hope, nurturing it like a fragile ember, even as despair threatened to overwhelm them, knowing that if the next harvest failed, their suffering would only deepen. The psychological impact was immense. The constant, gnawing hunger, the relentless cold, the profound fear of death, these eroded mental fortitude, making every task harder, every moment of rest a battle. Hope, a fragile commodity, was constantly challenged by the brutal reality of an unchanging, unforgiving world. The cold bites through cloth as food runs thin. You ration each crumb, hoping the harvest will be kinder next year. Winters of want was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the hard realities of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless ache of hunger and the quiet despair of a life defined by scarcity, perpetually awaiting the mercy of the changing seasons. Beyond the gnawing hunger, and the relentless cold that permeated every aspect of medieval peasant life lay a more intimate, persistent, and inescapable horror: the ubiquitous presence of parasites. Fleas, lice, and itch were a pervasive, chilling reality. No matter how you wash, parasites remain. They live in your clothes, in your bed, and sometimes in your skin, transforming every moment of rest into a relentless battle against unseen invaders, and defining the brutal realities of hygiene and comfort in a world utterly devoid of modern sanitation. Imagine the air inside your humble cottage, thick with wood smoke, damp earth, and the pervasive aromas of medieval life, now mingled with the subtle, sickening tang of human presence and profound discomfort. The sounds were no longer the low moans of hunger. They included the incessant scratching, the restless shifts of bodies, and the low murmurs of sleep-deprived individuals. Candlelight shimmering on sacks of grain, now empty, illuminated faces etched with weariness and a persistent, low-grade torment. For the vast majority of medieval peasants, infestations of fleas and lice were a universal, inescapable fact of life. These tiny, insidious parasites thrived in the unsanitary conditions, the crowded homes, the constant proximity of human and animal bodies, and the infrequent washing of both people and clothing. Listen to the incessant scratching, a rhythmic, almost unconscious, sound that punctuated the silence of the night, emanating from every member of the family. Hear the restless shifts of bodies on the straw bed, turning, twisting, seeking a fleeting moment of relief from the relentless irritation. See the worn woolen garments, perpetually itchy, their fibers a haven for countless tiny invaders. No matter how you wash, parasites remain. Personal hygiene, as we understand it, was a foreign concept. Water was precious, often cold, and washing was a rare, rudimentary affair, usually limited to a quick splash from a communal basin. Clothes, typically made of coarse wool, were rarely washed, accumulating layers of dirt, sweat, and countless parasites. Even if a peasant managed a brief wash, the parasites would quickly reinfect from their clothes, their bedding, or their close-packed neighbors. They live in your clothes, in your bed, and sometimes in your skin. Fleas, tiny, dark specks, would leap with astonishing agility, burrowing into clothing, hair, and finding purchase in the folds of skin, their bites causing incessant itching and serving as vectors for disease. Lice, more insidious, lived in hair and the seams of garments, laying their eggs, nits, their relentless crawling, adding another layer of maddening irritation. Scabies mites, burrowing into the skin, caused persistent, agonizing itchiness and lesions. The psychological impact was immense. The constant discomfort, the relentless itching, the pervasive understanding that one's body was perpetually infested. These eroded mental fortitude, making every task harder, every moment of rest a battle. Sleep was shallow, restless, punctuated by constant scratching, amplifying the exhaustion and despair. The presence of these parasites was more than just a nuisance. It was a profound indignity, a constant reminder of their lowly status, their vulnerability to forces beyond their control. It underscored the profound lack of hygiene, the brutal realities of their existence. Your family, huddled close, shared this grim reality. Their clothing, their hair, their very bodies bore the marks of constant struggle with parasites. Their own struggles with itching and grime were a shared burden, an unspoken understanding of their common lot. No matter how you wash, parasites remain. They live in your clothes, in your bed, and sometimes in your skin. Fleas, lice, and itch was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the sensory world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless assault of pervasive parasites and the quiet despair of a life without true comfort or cleanliness. Beyond the gnawing hunger, the relentless cold, and the pervasive itch of parasites, The medieval peasant faced a constant, terrifying truth about their own bodies. Sickness struck without warning, often defying all logic. Illness without answers was a pervasive, chilling reality. A fever comes without warning, and healing means prayer, herbs, and hope, rarely enough, transforming a fragile existence into a continuous, desperate battle against unseen, incomprehensible forces, deepening the profound fear of death and the terrifying mystery of their own fleeting lives. Imagine the air inside your humble cottage, thick with wood smoke, damp earth, and the pervasive aromas of medieval life, now mingled with the sour smell of sickness and profound weakness. The sounds were no longer the low moans of hunger. They included the insistent, racking coughs, the low moans of fever, the quiet whimpers of pain, and the anxious murmurs of worried family members. Candlelight shimmering on empty sacks of grain illuminated faces etched with profound anxiety and grim determination. For the vast majority of medieval peasants, good health was a rare and fleeting luxury. Their lives were plagued by a constant barrage of ailments, both chronic and acute, born of their harsh living conditions, poor nutrition, lack of hygiene, and the complete absence of scientific understanding of disease. Listen to the incessant, hacking coughs echoing through the hut, their sound raw and insistent, making breath a painful struggle for a feverish child or a weakened adult. Hear the low moans of feverish bodies, tossing restlessly on their straw beds, their skin slick with sweat, yet shivering uncontrollably. See the flushed faces, the dull, unfocused eyes, the small, frail bodies fighting a desperate, silent battle against an invisible enemy, their fragile lives hanging in the balance. A fever comes without warning, sickness struck with bewildering randomness. A person might be healthy in the morning, only to be racked by a debilitating fever by evening, its cause utterly unknown. This unpredictability amplified the terror, fostering a profound sense of helplessness. Fevers, coughs, boils, dysentery, these were common occurrences, but their origins were shrouded in mystery. Healing means prayer, herbs, and hope, rarely enough. Without any understanding of microbes, antibiotics, or modern medicine, the medieval approach to healing was limited. The village healer, with her knowledge of herbs, might offer a bitter tea or a soothing poultice, but her remedies were often more about comfort and hope than cure. The priest, his face grim, would lead fervent prayers, administer last rites, seeking divine intervention. But too often, these efforts were rarely enough. The illness would progress, overwhelming the weakened body, leading to agonizing suffering and, frequently, death. The lack of effective cures, the knowledge that recovery was often a matter of chance or divine whim, bred profound fear and helplessness. The psychological impact was immense. A constant awareness of illness, the knowledge that a sudden fever or a persistent cough could swiftly claim a loved one, was a crushing burden. It amplified the sense of profound helplessness, deepening the despair, transforming the fragile sanctuary of the cottage into a crucible of suffering and fear. Your family, huddled close, shared this grim reality. Their own illnesses, their desperate remedies, their unwavering prayers were a shared burden, an unspoken understanding of their common lot. A fever comes without warning, and healing means prayer, herbs, and hope, rarely enough. Illness without answers was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the hard realities of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless assault of pervasive illness and the quiet despair of a life without basic medical understanding. The village healer's wisdom was a profound repository of ancient knowledge. From charms to poultices made of plants and mud, she treats wounds with knowledge older than written words, transforming the abundant natural world into a vital, often life-saving, pharmacy, a testament to practical ingenuity and an unwavering dedication to alleviating suffering. Imagine the air inside a humble hut, thick with the pungent aroma of wood smoke, old herbs, and the subtle tang of human effort and fear mingled with the earthy scent of drying plants. The sounds were no longer the low moans of illness. They included the rhythmic grind of herbs in a mortar, the gentle murmur of instruction, and the hushed voices of those seeking solace. Candlelight shimmering on empty sacks of grain illuminated small bundles of carefully preserved plants, hanging from rafters, their power a quiet, often mysterious promise. The village healer, often an older woman, a midwife, or a wise person, was the repository of generations of accumulated knowledge about the natural world and the human body. Her wisdom was not derived from books or universities, but from keen observation, trial, and error, and an intimate understanding of local plants and their properties. She was a respected, yet sometimes feared, figure, walking a fine line between accepted practice and accusations of witchcraft, especially in times of profound societal stress. Listen to the low rhythmic grind of dried herbs in a small stone mortar, their leaves slowly releasing their potent aromas. Hear the hushed murmurs of the healer, carefully dispensing advice, instructing on dosage, explaining the properties of a bitter tea for fever, or a soothing poultice for a swelling. See her hands, rough and cracked, yet moving with a surprising delicacy, preparing a remedy, her eyes sharp and knowing, her face etched with profound weariness, but also unwavering compassion. From charms to poultices made of plants and mud, she treats wounds with knowledge older than written words. Her methods were a pragmatic blend of empiricism, folk magic, and spiritual belief. She knew an extensive range of medicinal herbs: willow bark for fever and pain, comfrey for bone breaks, chamomile for calm, garlic for infections. These were brewed into teas, crushed into poultices, or mixed with fat into salves. Mud, a ubiquitous resource, was often mixed with herbs to create cooling or drawing poultices for boils and wounds. But her remedies also included charms, whispered spells, and specific rituals. She understood the deep-seated fears that gripped people in this precarious world and offered spiritual comfort alongside physical aid. A pouch of specific herbs might be worn close to the body, an incantation whispered over a sickbed, or a blessing offered for protection. The effectiveness of her knowledge, particularly against common ailments and injuries, was undeniable. She set broken bones, cleaned wounds, eased pain, and helped women through childbirth, often saving lives where no other aid was available. Her practical wisdom was a profound antidote to the pervasive ignorance. The psychological impact was immense. For those suffering, for parents with a sick child, the healer offered a tangible sense of agency, a belief that something could be done, that their suffering was not entirely arbitrary. Her presence, her knowledge, her quiet confidence offered profound hope in a world devoid of it. From charms to poultices made of plants and mud, she treats wounds with knowledge older than written words. The village healer's wisdom was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the hard realities of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless assault of pervasive illness and the quiet despair of a life without basic medical understanding, enduring through the strength of ancient, knowing hands. As winter's lethal grip tightened relentlessly upon medieval towns, freezing rivers, silencing mills, and emptying granaries, the gnawing ache of hunger reached a fever pitch. Death, once an intimate, constant visitor, now became a pervasive, overwhelming presence, amplified by the suffering. The bell of morning was a chilling, pervasive reality. A slow toll fills the village air, and every heart knows someone has lost their fight against famine or disease, transforming the very voice of the community into a solemn, mournful lament for countless lost lives, perpetually echoing the immense, unquantifiable cost of medieval existence. Imagine the air, now thick with the palpable weight of grief, heavy with the mingled sense of fear, damp earth, and the subtle, sickening aroma of disease. The sounds were no longer the low moans from within homes. They included the hushed whispers of terror, the desperate cries of families, and the pervasive, mournful clang of the church bell. Fog rolling through deserted towns intensified the chilling atmosphere, shrouding the pervasive tolling in a veil of dread. In medieval society, the church bell was the voice of the community. It marked the passage of the hours, summoned villagers to mass, celebrated births and weddings, and tolled for deaths. Its varied cadences were a familiar, comforting part of daily life, a sonic anchor in a world without clocks. But in times of famine and widespread illness, its purpose was tragically redefined, becoming almost singularly dedicated to the grim task of counting the fallen. Listen to the solitary, deep clang that would pierce the heavy silence. Then, after a long, agonizing pause, another, and another, slow, deliberate. Each sound vibrated through the very earth, penetrating the thick walls of your cottage, gripping your heart with a cold, unrelenting dread. The bell was a hammer blow, each strike a direct announcement of another life extinguished. A slow toll fills the village air, and every heart knows someone has lost their fight against famine or disease. The rhythm of the tolling was slow, mournful, designed to amplify the sense of loss, to mark the gravity of each death. The cold itself seemed to mute the bell's resonance, making it sound deeper, more drawn out, imbued with a profound, pervasive sorrow. The psychological impact was immense. The constant audible reminder of death eroded hope, amplified despair, and intensified the sense of profound helplessness. The bell became inextricably linked with terror, its sound a harbinger of fresh sorrow, of lives extinguished without mercy, often not by plague alone, but by the slow, agonizing grip of hunger and cold, or the ravages of untreated disease. The village priest, or his designated bell ringer, bore the grim weight of his duty. He knew the specific rhythms and patterns of the tolls, the silent code that conveyed the nature of the warning. 3 swift, short tolls for a child, 9 for an adult. But in seasons of want, death was so constant, so overwhelming, that the bell often tolled almost continuously, its rhythm a grim counterpoint to the town's suffering. The empty granaries, the frozen wells, the desperate barter, the sickness of emptiness, all these hardships culminated in the tolling of the bell. It was the ultimate, undeniable proof of famine's triumph, of winter's lethal embrace. A slow toll fills the village air, and every heart knows someone has lost their fight against famine or disease. The bell of morning was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the hard realities of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface. Forever tethered to the relentless burden of death and the quiet despair of a life lived under the constant shadow of widespread mortality, its silent echoes haunting every generation. Part 5, Night, Stories, and the Returning Dawn. After the relentless, grueling toil of a medieval day, consumed by cold, hunger, illness, and the pervasive anxieties of a harsh, unforgiving world, the setting of the sun brought not peace, but a grim, weary urgency. A door barred against the dark was a fundamental, primal ritual. You close the wooden door, set the beam across it, and hope nothing moves in the night outside, transforming the simple act of securing a dwelling into a profound declaration of defense against the manifold terrors of the medieval night, underscoring the constant, pervasive fear of crime, danger, and unseen malevolent forces. Imagine the air inside the cramped, mud-daubed dwelling, thick with wood smoke, damp earth, and the pervasive aromas of medieval life, now mingled with the subtle tang of human apprehension. The sounds were no longer the low moans of tired bodies. They included the creak of heavy wooden doors, the metallic scrape of bolts, and the hushed whispers of families preparing for the darkness. Fading candlelight over cobblestone streets illuminates shadowy figures stumbling towards their homes. The medieval night was a vastly different realm from the ordered chaos of the day. Without widespread street lighting, the village plunged into near absolute darkness. Crime, particularly theft and assault, soared. Fires were a constant danger in densely packed dwellings. And malevolent spirits, mischievous fairies, and even witches were believed to roam more freely after dusk. Listen to the rhythmic creak of heavy wooden doors, slowly, deliberately, being pulled shut, their ancient timbers groaning in protest. Hear the metallic scrape of an iron bolt being slid into place, the sharp thud of a stout wooden beam being wedged across the doorframe, a final definitive punctuation mark against the encroaching darkness. See the dark, imposing form of the door, now firmly secured, its iron fixtures glinting faintly in the dim lamplight, a tangible barrier between the precarious safety of the home and the terrors of the outside. You close the wooden door, set the beam across it, and hope nothing moves in the night outside. This was the core of the ritual. The wooden door, however thick, the iron bolt, however sturdy, were fragile defenses against a determined thief or a desperate outlaw. But they were all you had. The act of securing them was a desperate prayer, a profound hope that these physical barriers would somehow deter the unseen dangers that lurked in the black. The fear of thieves, of burglars, of violent thugs was paramount. Without an organized police force for the common peasant, personal security rested squarely on the strength of one's home. But beyond human threats, the fear of malevolent spirits, of ghosts, of the unquiet dead, also fueled the need for strong defenses. The dark was their domain, their power believed to wax strongest in the profound gloom. The psychological impact was immense. The constant awareness of the night's dangers, the knowledge that their home, their most precious sanctuary, was under siege from crime and unseen forces, fueled a deep-seated anxiety. The act of locking the door, however routine, became a profound ritual of protection, a desperate hope that wood in iron would prove sufficient against the pervasive terror. Your family, huddled close, shared this grim reality. Their sleep, often shallow and restless, was subconsciously attuned to the sounds from beyond the door, listening for any suspicious movement, any unfamiliar rustle, any sign of intrusion. You close the wooden door, set the beam across it, and hope nothing moves in the night outside. A door barred against the dark was a profound reality of medieval peasant life, a chilling reminder that one day in the Middle Ages would be a total nightmare. It was a calm, immersive journey into the social world of the past, charting the unseen horrors beneath the surface, forever tethered to the relentless burden of constant vigilance and the quiet despair of a life lived under the constant shadow of potential peril. When the last embers of the hearth settle into a soft red glow, and the cold night wraps itself around your small wooden cottage, you begin to understand something the peasants of the Middle Ages once knew by heart: that survival was not a moment, but a rhythm, a slow, quiet endurance woven through every breath of their days. Long before clocks ruled the hours, before chimneys cleared the air, before comfort became something ordinary and expected, there were people living lives held together by mud, hope, and the stubborn strength of waking up again. They rose from beds of straw with aching limbs, stepped into boots still wet from yesterday's fields, and walked paths carved not by choice, but by necessity. They bowed to lords, to weather, to hunger, to rules older than memory, not because they believed in them, but because they had no power not to. And yet, there was a quiet dignity in their days, in the warmth of a shared fire, in the bread they kneaded together, in the stories whispered by flamelight when the world outside was nothing but wind and wolves. Their joys were small, but they were real. A good harvest, a safe night, a child's laughter in a field of cold morning fog, For all the hardship, their lives were stitched with moments of simple humanity, the kind we often overlook in our world of endless noise. And maybe that is the lesson their lives leave gently behind, that resilience isn't heroic, it isn't loud, it isn't the stuff of legends, it is waking up in the cold, it is work-worn hands and tired eyes, it is continuing quietly, when the world gives you little reason to. So rest now. Let the fields fade into darkness. Let the tolling bell drift away into the night air. Let the wolves howl from distant woods as they always have far from your door. And remember, you do not have to live their struggle, but you can honor it by understanding it. Sleep well tonight, knowing you have walked, even just in imagination, through the hardest parts of a life most of humanity once lived. Good night, and may the quiet strength of those forgotten peasants watch gently over your dreams.